This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that I use for all of my website needs. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I hope you are well wherever you are in the world today. Now recently I've been lucky enough to spend a week with the Fujifilm GFX100 II on rental. I haven't bought it, at least not yet, but I was curious to see how it compared to the cameras I've used in the past, the medium format ones. For a bit of background, I've been through a few Fujifilm medium format cameras over the years. Now, I started with the GFX50R, back whenever that came out, then moved to the original GFX100, which was a fantastic camera for its time. And eventually, I swapped that out for the GFX100 II, which is still the one I have today in my cupboard right behind me. The GFX100 II has been my go-to for studio work and commercial work, etc. But when the GFX100 II was announced, I couldn't really resist giving it a try, especially to see what it's like with the new autofocus and the low light stuff. So in this video, I'm going to talk about my experiences with the GFX100 II over that week. I'll show you how it performed in two very different scenarios, a controlled studio shoot and a boxing match, of all things. I've been especially impressed with its autofocus actually and the low light performance, two areas where I think it really shines. And this isn't a full-on blown review of the GFX100 II. I'm just going to talk you through some images to show some close-ups of the noise or lack of it, etc. So let's dig in and see what the GFX100 II can do. I think the first thing to point out is that whilst I've been using the GFX100 for portrait work, it has been absolutely amazing for that. And I do not expect, and there is no real difference between the image quality in terms of the raw files and the editing that you can do with these files from the GFX100, GFX100, or the 100 II in fact, because the sensors are pretty much the same, or they are the same. It's ultimately about the usability of those sensors that are slightly different. And I did try and give the GFX100 a run for its money at the Badminton Horse Trials, and actually it performed reasonably well, although there was a lot of missed shots rather than hit shots, if you like. Although, you know, you would expect that. The GFX100, none of the medium format sensor cameras are really built for this kind of photography. Although when we get to the GFX100 II stuff in a minute for the boxing, you'll see that actually it's a lot more capable than the predecessors were. So if we pop into Lightroom and look at some of the GFX100 images, not the 100 II here, and you can see the grain here for 2500 ISO, the noise, I'll just reset this raw file so we can go back to the original, so you can just confirm that that's the original raw file, 2500 ISO, on the 45mm lens, you can see there's a little bit of noise there. It's not unmanageable, especially these days with the amazing capabilities of Lightroom's denoise. Let's pop across this edited images of my very good friend Nick, who's sadly no longer with us. I'm sure he won't mind me using his picture here. And again, 2500 ISO. Again, it's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. But you can see it. You can see that grain. And here with Albi, I'm using a constant light source for these images, by the way. Now, this is a lower ISO, 1250. And again, you can just about see it. Final edited photo. My little boy using my X100F. So if we look at these images one more time, they're great. You know, I'm using a constant light source here. The face detection, I didn't really use much with the GFX100. I was doing it manually. Everything was fine, but it was a bit slow. It was all very passive. I was very interested to see how the GFX100 II worked with face detection in the studio, but also in fast-moving action type stuff. So when we moved to the studio, I had the camera set to face detection, continuous focus, CL, and I was not disappointed in any way, shape or form. Far more accurate and far more convincing when it came to the face detection throughout all of the portraits that I shot. And you know, I loved working with these images. These are all edited with my Film Edition 3 presets, of course. And your discount still applies, YT10 at checkout, gets you 10% off. And here you can see I'm using a much lower ISO. The GFX100 II goes down to 80 natural ISO. And, you know, it's clean as a whistle. If we zoom in here on this particular part of the image. You'll see how clean it is at 80. Now, of course, the ones we were showing from the GFX100S were higher ISO, but wait until we get to the boxing and you'll see the difference of those higher noise levels. Here we go, a nice, lovely little edit, a couple of one-click edits from within here. And then Billy, the dog, came along, and it was time to check out the animal face detection. I just want to talk about the sponsor of today's episode, Squarespace. And I've used Squarespace for a very long time now, and you can use it too. You can start a completely personalized website with the new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. You can even sell your products and services with an online store, just like I do. Whether you sell physical goods, digital content, prints, or services, Squarespace has the tools you need to start selling online. You can even add appointments to your Squarespace website and start accepting clients if you are doing some kind of scheduling. Squarespace really is the system that I would recommend to any photographer. Go to squarespace.com/Kevin Mullins for 10% off your first website or domain hosting. Now, this was something I was actually quite amazed by. You know, to whip it, of course, not moving too fast, Billy the Whippet. But the images, the camera actually with the animal detection, I've always seen animal detection as a little bit of a gimmick, but actually it worked really, really well. And if you're in pet portraiture, I think this is an amazing, amazing feature. Let's pop into Lightroom and we'll edit this picture of Billy. So here's the original raw file. I'll just reset it so we can see that's the case. Push the exposure up a little bit, I think pretty much. And I'm going to use my Arizona film preset from Film Edition 3 Monochrome. And that looks pretty good straight away. I really like that. It's got a very filmic look to it. I might push the exposure one more time. Now, if I zoom in, you're going to see quite a bit of grain there. And that's because my preset is a filmic preset. So there's noise added to it. So I'm just going to go down to my utilities, which are included in all the presets, of course. Just do grain reset, and then you can see how clean that becomes. Look how sharp the eyes of Billy are there. Really beautiful. I might just use one of my AI utilities to darken the background. Once that's done, it's too much, so I'll just use a slider at the top to pull it back a little bit. Get that lovely, lovely picture of Billy. So in the studio environment that we're talking about now, the GFX100 II is, I would say, better than the GFX100S in a couple of ways. First of all, that face detection works so much better. It's certainly more trustworthy now. And then you have the animal detection. If you're an animal portrait photographer, you're going to love this. Whether it's enough to make you want to consider swapping from a GFX100S or GFX100S II, I don't know. But certainly if you're finding that the face detection, autofocus, animal detection, it's not quite up to it with the previous ones, and GFX100 II definitely would be something to look at. But then I took it to a boxing match. So Malmesbury Amateur Boxing Tournament happens every year, and I often go and photograph it, and this time I took the GFX100 II. Now look at this picture. I'm not proclaiming to be a sports photographer, and I wouldn't also say that the GFX system is suitable to sports. It is not, but just for something different, I took it. Now this photograph, if you look at the EXIF in the bottom right-hand side, 12,800 ISO. Now I have edited this photo, of course, and we'll pop into Lightroom in a second to do that. But the fact is, the face detection worked. Most of the time it worked. I figured out halfway through the evening that it was getting a little bit confused by the head pads. And by and large, though, did a really, really good job. So here you can see this one, 4,000 ISO. Of course, I've edited it as well, but it's got a lovely filmic look to it, hasn't it? Dynamic range out of these GFX files are so impressive, really enjoyable to work with and edit. And I was very, very impressed. The autofocus, the continuous focus, and the face detection did remarkably well, I have to say. Now, a little bit of a warning, this next image has a little bit of blood splatter in it. I'm not a massive fan of boxing. I've got to say I'm doing somebody a favor by taking these pictures. But as you can see here, the focus is not pin sharp, but it was shooting through a big burst. I think it was at 8 frames per second. And if you think about this, 100 megapixel sensor shooting 8 frames per second in this kind of environment, the lighting is really, really difficult as well. I have to say, I was actually very, very surprised, pleasantly surprised. And here's another one, 12,800 ISO on the 63mm lens, GFX100 II. It's just absolutely brilliant. I mean, I can't really describe how clean these images are at this high ISO. Now, of course, as I said, I've edited them and we will pop into Lightroom in a moment and look at one of these images. But really, ultimately, that image is very, very clean and very beautiful. So let's pop into Lightroom and have a look at this image here. Now, this is the first one I showed you, and it is at 12,800 ISO, as you can see there at the top. This is the raw file. I've reset it, and even at 12,800 ISO, this is clean-ish as far as you're going to get clean from a medium format sensor. I think it's beautiful. Just going to crop it to finish the edit off. We'll do this here. Crop it 16:9 for this presentation, and I'll probably just do a pop of white balance just to get that a little bit cleaned up. And I think then, you know, ultimately it's how you decide the images you want to look. Of course, I'm using my own presets, but you can do your own edit as you so wish. And I think in this case, I'm actually going to use one of the profiles, not the presets that are included in my pack. Film color 4, 3. Yeah, I think film color 4 is more cinematic, I think, for this particular type of shot. I really like that. So I'm just going to do that. And then I'm going to use the utilities to add a little bit of density to the image. Probably medium. Yeah, it gives it a little bit of punch, doesn't it? I quite like that as it looks. And then, you know, when you're looking at an image like this, you can have fun playing with these types of images, can't you? I love it when it's not commercial stuff. It's just my own personal editing. I can do whatever I want. See what it looks like in standard monochrome. Yeah, quite like that as well. Nice black and white finish. And it looks great. Yeah, really, really impressed with the dynamic range of these GFX100 II files, that's for sure. And just to finish off the filmic look to it, I might give it a little bit of grain. I think that would look great printed. There you go, GFX100 II. Few different types of shots there. I have to say, GFX100 II is better for sure than my GFX100S. Autofocus speed is better, the face detection is better, and being able to use it in those really tricky lights and get those high ISO images and do something with them in terms of editing, it's a dream. Whether that's enough for me to upgrade from a GFX100S to the 100 II, I'm not so sure. The GFX100S does still do what I need it to do. I don't need that extra pace, that extra speed. I'm going to add it to my want list, I think. Your mileage may vary, but if you're in the market for a medium format camera right now, then I think you'd be remiss not to look at that GFX100 II, even at that price point. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.